Welcome back to the Intercourse Show. I am your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show for you. In this segment, we're covering quite a few. I'm trying to do more of these live interviews, live videos, so I can be more interactive and I can even talk to some of my followers if they want to, interact. Feel free to, weigh in on some of the topics that we discuss. But transitioning from what's happening in the news, because that could be a little depressing for us to hear about bombs and war and all this stuff. We're talking now relationships. Not that this topic is less volatile, but we're talking about divorces. And there's a gentleman named Rich Cooper that did a video stating that full-time working wives divorce 50% less. I was intrigued by that stat, so I wanted to react to the video. Now, I have not seen this video before, so we're going to react to it as I kind of go along. But let's tackle it.
For you guys, that is going to blow your mind on divorce rates, depending on what your wife is doing, whether she's stay-at-home, a part-timer, or a full-time employee. Let's get right into this. So this data came from a study done on homemakers versus working women across the United States, United Kingdom, France, and Scandinavia. And they all showed very clear and similar patterns. I'll let my editor put it up on the screen so you can see it. But homemakers, the stay-at-home wives, the stay-at-home moms, the thing that the traditional conservatives tend to shoot for, are the highest divorce rates amongst married couples, 45 to 52% within 10 years of marriage. Women that have part-time jobs or part-time employed, they stay at home a little bit and they go out into the workforce and work, I don't know, I guess maybe 20 to 35 hours a week, 35 to 40%. And the divorce rate for full-time employed women is 25 to 33% after 10 years of marriage. Now, I'm going to tell you why this is happening and provide a little bit of insight and some prescriptions around it to help you navigate this slippery slope a little bit better. I know a lot of you guys are adamant about marriage and you still love the idea. Fine, no problem. I'm not going to fault you. But what I will do is I'll provide you some actionable advice after I tell you why this is happening. So this census data is fascinating and proves a point that I've been making for a long time now. The liberal mindset is more of the egalitarian, we're equal, we're all the same. The man goes to work, the woman goes to work, sometimes referred to as a DINK acronym, D-I-N-K, double income, no kids. A lot of the times is a pretty consistent pattern in the Western world. They'll both go out and get degrees, they'll both make some money, they'll meet in their 30s or sometimes a little bit later, get married, and then they'll go into the workforce. Sometimes they have kids, sometimes they don't. But the divorce rates are very low in that instance. In fact, they're about half the divorce rates of having your wife stay at home, which is what most traditional conservatives tend to do or aim to do when they go and get married. Fascinating data on that, isn't it? Why does that happen? Well, the incentive in divorce is to basically distribute the wealth from that union, the matrimony, if you will. They essentially take everything and family law puts it in a pile, the matrimonial home, the assets, the savings, all that sort of stuff, and it splits it down the middle and divides it amongst the man and the woman. Women are hypergamous. We've spoken about this before, which usually means that women marry up and across on the socioeconomic scale. What does that look like? Well, Becky, the hairdresser that made $40,000 a year cutting hair, or maybe still does it part-time in the marriage, tends to marry Steve from accounting, who has a vice president's role or maybe a C-suite role, making well into six figures, doing quite well. So why are full-time employed women less likely to get divorced? I'll tell you why. Because family law isn't in their favor. There is not a lot of incentive for a successful woman that works a professional job, that has a professional career, the kind that went to university, has a degree, might be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, may have a business degree, may be an entrepreneur, any number of those things. They start making good money. And what they realize is there's not much in it for them to get divorced. Because when you put everything in a pile and you split it down the middle, there's not much really to split. There's not much for them to gain on the exit, if you can put it that way. In some cases, if she's doing better than he is, let's say that she is a licensed professional, like a doctor, for example, and maybe he heads up a marketing team or is working in some other professional field and makes the same or maybe less money than she does. I would argue that the incentive for her to get divorced is completely eliminated because she would probably have to pay him. That doesn't happen very often. I would say maybe less than 5 or 10% of divorces end up in that situation. It's a very, very small percentage, maybe even less than 5%. And that's again because women tend to marry across and up on the socioeconomic scale. They don't usually marry down. So there's I guess a strong incentive for her to stay married. There's not much in it for her to untie the knot because she can't take anything that he's created or any wealth that's created in the marriage. If anything, she may find herself in a position where she's paying him, where she pays him alimony, where she pays him child support. An interesting piece of data, which I came across when I was writing my first book, The Unplugged Alpha. You want the second edition, by the way, that's pinned below. I'll have my editor put it up on the screen so you know what that looks like when you go to Amazon, is that when women are forced by family law to pay child support or alimony to the ex, they are far less likely to comply with their obligation to do so. You always hear the notion of the deadbeat dad that doesn't pay his share, or doesn't pay his alimony, or doesn't pay his child support. But in situations where women are forced to pay the father or to pay the man, they're way more likely to not pay that guy, to protest, to make up some reason why they won't go through with it. So it seems like the liberal idea or the egalitarian idea to marry your equal, quote unquote, seems to be a better strategy if you're going to get married. Marrying down, keeping her at home, keeping her barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, looking after your house and your children might seem like a great idea, might be what the church implies, maybe what your cultural values would imply, or conservative values, but that's the highest risk category. The divorce rates are almost twice as high when she's a stay-at-home mom, quite simply because the family law system incentivizes her to untie the knot. So if she's not happy, if she gets bored of you, if she finds that you're more of a plugged-in beta male and isn't that enthusiastic or excited about being married to you anymore, there is a probability or a strong chance that she could say, you know what, I can have all of his financial resources. I can probably keep the house. I'll get child support because I'll get custody because I've been looking after the children for the most part. So why not untie the knot? I've literally heard women, when I was writing my book, I talked about this when I was in the coffee shop, coaching each other and saying something along the lines of, you know, one woman's complaining to the other woman that's already divorced that, you know, he's a pain in the ass. She's not happy in the marriage. And then the coaching or the idea that she gets from the divorced woman is, you know, girl, you can get divorced and still get all of that money and half the house, or even keep the house and still get alimony and child support and keep the children 80% of the time and not have to put up with this dumbass either. And that's not that uncommon. So, you know, guys, when I talk about smart men not getting married anymore, and that's a chapter straight out of The Unplugged Alpha, it's a very real consideration that some of the smartest men that I know make when they contemplate how to deal with women on a long-term basis, whether or not they're going to invite them into their life, at what distance they're going to invite them into their life, how they're going to manage that relationship, and so on and so forth. I think that guys will spend a lot more time researching what's the fuel capacity of the next car, how big is the trunk space, what kind of miles per gallon are they going to get out of the fuel economy stats of the car, than they do vetting the woman that they're going to marry or structure their life in such a way so that family law doesn't invade or hijack their lifestyle, you know, if I can put it that way, where the government isn't invited into their life to decide what happens to their money. So from a Western perspective, it seems like, based on this data, which, you know, corroborates essentially what I've been speaking about for years, you're better off not keeping her at home, unfortunately. I hate to say it. So there's that reality. You know, when I got married and I got divorced, and this was years ago, I guess I kind of got lucky in a sense because my ex-wife was a lawyer. So she was a licensed professional. She made a lot of money. She did well. And I was an entrepreneur, probably 4 or 5 years into my business at the time. And we made roughly about the same kind of money. And when I ended up getting divorced and untying the knot, there was no division of assets. There was no alimony. There was no child support. So in the Western world, when you get divorced and you're making about the same amount of money, you've got about the same sort of cash flow. You've got about the same amount of assets when you come into the picture, maybe even a prenup at the same time. Although in situations where you're making about the same, it doesn't really matter anyway. The risk is very, very low. You just have to basically fight out shared custody if you have children when you untie the knot. And everything is kind of tickety-boo. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm divorced, and this is the absolute best time of my life. For a lot of guys, when they untie the knot and they understand the way the world works and they unplug from all these comforting lies, they find their life gets a lot better when they manage things. So as far as prescriptions go, and what I would recommend you guys do if you're living in the West, you need to be very, very careful if you're going to be the, the standard, typical, traditional conservative type of guy that's like, I want to go out, I want to bring home the bacon, she's going to cook it up, she's going to look after the house, raise the children, she'll be the one that's barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen and cooking the meals and look after the home, and I'll take care of making the money. You need to be very, very careful with that arrangement. You need to make absolutely sure, and you have to be absolutely certain that you're inviting the right kind of woman into your life. A lot of the problems that men deal with on a long-term basis can be reduced significantly in the selection phase of the dating or the romance, if I put it that way. If you're one of these conventional guys that wants to get married, make sure that you avoid the 21 red flags that I talk about in the Unplugged Alpha, and seek out the 16 green flags and the bright triad traits that I talk about in my newest book, The Top Shelf Man. You don't even need to get the books. You can download both of those chapters absolutely for free by opting into my email list. I'll leave a link pinned to that in both the description of the video and the top comment. Once you opt in, you can download that information and browse it. But really, the best thing that you can do, of course, is go through the books and understand all this material and fully unplug from all these comforting lies that society, culture, religion, media, marketing, and government has been selling to us for years and years and years. Women aren't sugar and spice and all things nice, and just doing the right thing isn't going to get you a loving, compliant, beautiful wife well into perpetuity that's enthusiastically going to want to sleep with you on a routine basis. That's just not the way that it works for most men. In fact, most men find that the process looks very little like that, especially as time goes on. So be very, very careful in who you select would be my first piece of advice. The second piece would be, you don't necessarily need to follow their prescriptions. You don't necessarily need to go and before the government, before your church or whatever, profess your love for this woman and invite her into your life and live in a way that looks like married or get married in front of them. You can, in fact, be with a woman, raise a family, and do this with a significant reduction in risk if you manage the process properly. That's a bit of a longer conversation. I actually have a 3-hour lecture in my School of Unplugging. So if you've enjoyed my books, you've watched my videos, you really like what I'm doing here, the best way that you can support me on a go-forward basis and get my best knowledge and my best data and join a community of like-minded men, check out my School of Unplugging. That's pinned below in the top comment. And you can access the 3-hour vetting guide where I show you exactly what steps to take to minimize this risk dramatically, if at the very least, eliminate most of it, if we're being absolutely honest. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and this data and some of this provided some insight to you. Peace out.
That was Rich Cooper. Definitely go check out his channel. There's some good insight on that channel. I think what he talks about is pretty relevant. It's something that we don't really discuss much as men. Obviously marriage, we're kind of given the Disney World view of it, where you're the prince and you come and save the day. You get this young lady and you take care of her and you do all these different things and you take care of her and you guys live happily ever after. It's a doggy dog world in real life. Doesn't exactly go like that. As a person who's been there and done that, it doesn't go like that. There are in the westernized system an incentive for women to actually walk away from the relationship. And it's different if you're getting married because you're basing it on some traditional religious beliefs that you have, whether it's, you're Muslim or Christian, you have to make sure that both people actually subscribe to that, what your religion says about how your marriage is supposed to flow and go. When you're walking into a relationship with someone that isn't really subscribed to your traditional views, that's rooted in biblical principles, that means they don't have a dog in the fight. Like, they're not working to please God for the relationship, and most likely will not fight for the relationship. Now, in the biblical standpoint, from a Christian point of view, the Bible tells you till death do us part. And my pastor has done some recent teachings on this where he talks about, it's not God's will for you to be in a situation that's not healthy for you. And a loving God wouldn't necessarily want that for you. And that's what Rich Cooper said is actually true, in that you do need to find someone that is healthy for you, that does complement you, and that does share the same vision and the same principles and traditions, you know, so that you guys have some sort of basis for your relationship. What I found is that when you're in a relationship, you know, you have to view the relationship as, this is a way that I can demonstrate my love for God by how I treat this person. So if I treat this person in a way that's selfish, that's how God's going to view me, because he's saying, if I gave this person to you as a gift and you treat them with little to no regard for the fact that I've given them the treat this gift, or you treat them as if they're insignificant, doesn't matter to you, and you don't value the gift, then naturally, you know, you're not going to get it. The Bible says that the greatest among you be servants. So whoever's seeking to outserve the other person tends to be the ones who, you know, the relationships that work out. But for people who's in a relationship because it's a stepping stone to another phase of life, or they're looking for an outlet for the poor decisions they made in their past, and now they're just trying to get someone to be responsible for their poor decision, and so now they need to be married to you so you can balance their life, level them up, and now once they've gone back to school and got their degree and they're making more money than you, they don't see a need to have you around. So now they're more on to bigger and better things now that you've helped them get to that point where they can step out on their own. A lot of times that's what a lot of relationships are about. Or if you're in a relationship and it's not serving you in a way that it should, if you're in a relationship that's abusive or toxic, whether there's physical abuse or mental, emotional abuse, you know, I don't think that's anybody's calling. So to each his own. But I think what he's doing is educating a lot of men to say, don't fall into the hype and buy into this storyline that tells you that you get married and you live happily ever after, when there's a system designed to complicate things for you. And for the men who's gone through it, they're speaking from experience and they know what that's about. So it's not hearsay. These are people's real experiences. So it is important that you keep into consideration who you marry. They say that's one of the most important decisions you make. Make sure you're marrying somebody that you're compatible with. And again, I've had my own experiences, and I can tell you that is absolutely important. So you definitely want to make sure that, you know, you're compatible with the person you get with, and that you guys share similar vision, similar viewpoint. The Bible says, do not be unequally yoked. So if you guys are together, make sure you subscribe to the same things, you value the same things. There's good communication and good ability to problem solve. But he raised some points. I would have thought statistically it would have went the other way. You know, if a person was working full time, that means they're spending more time at work than probably in home, which would mean that they're exposed to other men and other things, which would mean that they would be more likely to be, you know, doing their own thing outside of the home. But, you know, there is some points where they says, well, you know, if the person's working, that means they're making an equal amount of money or something close. And if that's what is happening, they don't want to pay you. So they're more willing to work with you. I don't know that that's true either. I don't know if that's true either. But the statistics are the statistics. With that said, what say you? What do you guys think about this topic? Is these stats unfounded? Is this a load of crap to you? Do you think he's making some valid points? Weigh in on it. From what I heard, I saw this and I thought to myself, it came across my feed. I thought to myself, maybe I should talk about this a little bit, you know, because there may be some men who are on the fence. I know a recent celebrity who had a situation similar was Dak Prescott, who I believe the story is, I don't know if this is true, but the story is he called off his wedding with his longtime girlfriend and mother of his children because she refused to sign a prenup. And he's about, I think he's 200-300 million in. He just signed a deal, and he is not trying to potentially lose 150 million, 100 to 150 million if the relationship don't work out in a couple of years. So he's asking her to sign a prenup. Apparently, she's hesitant, and he pulled the plug. I do have to tell men to be mindful, go into it now and view it as a contract, because that's essentially what you're entering into. Make sure you understand what you stand to lose, especially if you're a man of means when you're going into that type of relationship. Make sure you understand, the person's interest, what it is that you're gaining from the relationship. Those are important things, and I think it's good to get mentors, talk to people who's been married before, and get insight. But also, consult your pastors or your imams or whoever your spiritual leaders are, just to get their take and to ensure that you guys are making the right decisions for both of you. All right. With that said, I thank you guys for joining me for this particular segment. I'm Mr. B from the Intercourse Show. I ask that you like and subscribe if you're not already connected, but also weigh in on this topic. Tell me, what do you think? Do you think what was being said here is valid? Do you think a lot of it is unfounded? Definitely weigh in. Let me know what your thoughts are. All right. Until we speak again, God bless. Talk to you soon.